It's rain through the window here on this Christmas holiday. Rain is getting in. I thought this year would end. I was hoping every year somehow. I don't know if it's the Irish in me or the white man in me or whatever, but I was hoping this year would end like It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know, you see the movie, it's like the whole community gets together and it's like, hey, let's help George, it's make an angel sing or make an angel ring a bell or whatever, and it just didn't turn out that way. Instead, once again, the year turns out to be more like the ending of The Godfather instead of A Wonderful Life. It's the bitterness, acrimony, it's you against me, against them, against civil war, total annihilation. Who can destroy, who can destroy, put down, insult, humiliate the other more than me, and it's just sad. So, yeah, and so it's been here at the end of 2018. The disenfranchised are still disenfranchised. Those who are in the community, in the neighborhood, in the project, in the housing, in the hood, in the community, in the, whatever you want to call it, they're all doing quite well. And they're loving one another, they're living with one another, they're partying with one another, they're socializing with one another, they're touring with one another, they're going around with one another. It's all good. It's a big merry-go-round as far as, the communities, once again, in 18, like in every year, really. It's just, hey, send it around, And that, I guess that's fine if you're in the community, if you're in the, neighborhood, if you're in the, hood, it's great. But if you're disenfranchised, if you're outside, if you're alienated, it can really be tough and it really can be trying. And people, certainly for a 55-year-old gay guy, they don't make it any easier to get inside, to get a ride on the merry-go-round. Anyways, I'm reminded of this at the end of the year, 2018, of an incident that happened to me in years and years ago of Diane. And I think I told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again because it's symbolic. It's kind of iconic in the way that it represents how those who are in, and those who are out, you got to work your way into, the joy of, these people and places and things and stuff. I left Diane, and this is the Stone Mountain, Georgia girl that I told you about years ago. who had a fascination for Stone Mountain, Georgia, where she lived and was raised, and, just was crazy about. And I left her in what, I don't know, we'll say, 99 or 2000. I left her sitting in a chair at a table at the Paseo Robles mall. It was like a mall in downtown Pasadena, and they had a terrace there, and she always sat there, same chair, same table every day. And I remember leaving her, and I'm taking off. It's prodigal son going to the outside world, and wish me well, mom, in 2000 or so. And I left her in that chair at that table at the Paseo Robles Mall, I think it was, in downtown Pasadena. Sitting there when I went to Phoenix. 10 years later, 10 years later, I came back to Pasadena to visit, to see what had happened. What changes had gone on in 10 years. That, it's like, hey, that, the prodigal son returns. Now, what has become of, the Pasadena that I knew and that I loved? And I didn't call anybody in advance. I didn't, write anybody. I just got a bus ticket and went to Pasadena. And I went to Paseo Robles, or the mall in downtown Pasadena. And just intuition, if you will. It's like, I want to know, it's like I have this feeling that Diane's going to be there. And, of course, all the boys around her, and sure enough, there she was, there she was. It was like, it's like 10 years later, she hadn't moved like an inch from where I left her 10 years before. And it's a lot like my stay in Boston this past, month. It's like, I saw guys there that like a year later, mind you, a year later, these guys were like, well, they were showering in the next stall. They weren't showering in the stall that I left them in a year ago at the homeless man's shelter. They're showering in the next stall. Significance here. Please pay attention. These boys are trying to, help you here. But there it was, and there she was. Diane, in the same chair at the same table that I left her 10 years ago. And what saddened me is that her attitude had changed. Her attitude was like, why are you still coming back here? Why are you still here? Why are you still, coming around here? That was her attitude. And I couldn't quite understand her attitude. It was like, a bit disconcerting, after traveling from Phoenix to see these old homeless buddies of mine and stuff. And I couldn't quite understand, the attitude. Like, but like, what are you coming back to? Why are you coming back? And it made me pause, and it made me stop and think, and was like, why am I coming back here? What is there back here? Where have these people gone in the last 10 years that they can tell me of their adventures in their life and their love and their it was almost like, we don't want to hear about your life, because we have no life to offer you in return. And it's like, it's kind of symbolized in the foot of Diane's chair when she left to go to the bathroom at the grocery store in the mall. It's like, I looked at her chair, and it was interesting because in the foot of her chair, now this was a chair she sat in for years, 10 years. And at the foot of one of the legs of her chair was a big rut in the concrete. There was like a rut in the concrete that was born by her sitting day after day, night after night in that chair. And by sitting there, she had worn the concrete out of the floor of the plaza in which she was sitting. Happy New Year, America.